Hey guys, I'd like to welcome you to the Kortex Media Podcast, where we navigate the fast-paced world of automotive and more. I'm your host, Corson Schmidt. Here today, I have Jerry Fossum. Jerry is a respected entrepreneur and the driving force behind Broadway Car Care, where he built a reputation for honest service, quality workmanship, and genuine community involvement. Beyond his leadership in automotive repair, Jerry is known for his hands-on approach in running multiple successful businesses and his dedication to supporting other local entrepreneurs. As the host of Small Business Talk with Jerry, he regularly shows insights and real-world advice with fellow business owners, drawing on his own experiences and those of his guests. Jerry's commitment to excellence, mentorship, and community engagement makes him a standout leader in both the automotive industry and the broader small business landscape. It's great to have you here, Jerry.
Well, thanks, Carson. I really appreciate the invite. That was a very nice intro, too. Thank you for all the kind words. That's
hey,
great.
No worries. No worries. Then they're true. We spoke before the podcast, and you have a great thing going on. You have multiple companies. But what was that first? Can you explain how you first stepped into the automotive industry and kind of your inspiration behind stepping into it?
Well, my dad was a mailman, and that's what he didn't care for it, but he did that to, put food on the table and keep the heat on. But he was like the neighborhood mechanic. We had lived on a dead end street with about 3 or 4 widowed little old ladies. And so I would mow their lawns as a kid, things to kind of take care of them that way. And they would always bring their sewing machines or their cars, it just didn't matter. If something broke, call Ernie. That was my dad. Call Ernie. He'll fix it. Go take it over to Ernie. He'll come pick it up. And, so I grew up with that mentality of you didn't hire anything out. We didn't have a ton of money, but so you didn't really hire anything out. If you could do it yourself, you did it yourself.
For sure.
And I have fallen off of that wagon many years ago. I hire everything done if I don't want to deal with it. But when I was younger, same thing. We were working on cars, and I was kind of a Chrysler guy when I got in my teen years. So I had an old '69 Charger. I had a
nice
72 and 70 and 72 Cuda. Had a couple Cornettes. So I had some fun cars.
Super cool. Yeah.
Yep. And we always worked on them, and then when I went into college, through high school, I should say, I was always a numbers guy, just a nerd, and yeah. That was who I was. So of course I thought, well, I'm going to, what are you going to go to college for? It's like, well, no one in my family had been to college yet, so this was a first for us. And so I did go to college. I said, well, I'm good with numbers. I should be an accountant. And so that's what I did. And I did really well in school, but to get through school and to pay for it, I took a job turning wrenches. So that's awesome. I was a mechanic, young and not very good at it. I shouldn't say that. We did just fine, but not fast. So I was never going to make a good living as a mechanic because I wasn't fast enough. I was too meticulous, and I don't want to confuse with being meticulous with actually being meticulous. I was meticulous for my standards, but like I say, in a professional setting, I was not a great mechanic, but I enjoyed it right up until it was a job. But it got me through school, went on to be an accountant, working for a consulting company, and it wasn't all through school. I was so focused on just going to school to get the grades, and graduate, get the diploma, essentially, get the degree. And then when I actually started doing it for a living, it's like, this is worse than turning wrenches. I hated it. I was good at it, way better at it being an accountant or, working with the numbers than I was being a mechanic. But I really liked the mechanic side of things. And when I moved up in the accounting firm, the consulting company, I actually became a consultant. And I realized that most business owners have real passion for what they're doing, and they're very good at their trade. But to run a business, it's two different things.
For sure.
And then, you'd tell them, okay, well, I don't care if it's a lady making soap, if it's a guy fixing cars, it just doesn't matter what the business is. They all want to tell you how they're going to do it. And it's like, yeah, but I understand, the technical side of it. Your trade. So don't give up on that. But running the business, let me help you. And they would not let you help them. They would buck everything that you tell them until they went broke, until they went bankrupt. And they were just part of that 94% of businesses that fail, and then you watch some of these automotive shops. I ended up with a few of those because I had a passion for it. And the potential was there on every single one. I guarantee you every one that I had that I would consult could have been a 7-figure business in time or better and get scaled into even more. And and these guys want to stay little mom and pop, and they're not making any real money. Their revenue's fine, but their expenses are out of hand, and most of them you couldn't convince. The ones that you could get through to, they're just, happy as could be, making money. Mm-hmm. So that's when I kind of went, after beating my head against the wall so long, it's like, well, as an accountant, one of my clients who did really well, he said, you are more of a business coach than an accountant. He says, you're an accountant in the spring when on quarterlies, 4 times a year, you're an accountant. The rest of the time, he said, I'm just going to call you coach. And it was cute because he's older than me, but we'd always, whenever I'd call him on the phone or we'd in person, he'd always called me coach, and he'd introduce me as coach. And it really struck a chord with me. I was like, he's not wrong. If your accountant is just doing your numbers, you got the wrong guy. You and I talked about that earlier before the recording. And I truly believe that if your accountant is just an accountant, he's just doing numbers for you, find somebody else. Find somebody who will talk to you about the business. Even if you don't take their advice, someone that you can bounce ideas off of, so you're not alone on the financial side of the business.
For sure.
It's really helpful. And that's when I said, why I could be a business coach. So I thought about the idea of going into that, and I was like, yeah, but it's too frustrating because people don't want to listen. Yeah. And then it just dawned on me, it's like, open a shop. I understand it. I'm not a good technician, but I don't need to be a good technician. I can hire those. Yeah. And I'm going to run the business. And Broadway Car Care is in its 22nd year right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been a great business for a lot of years, and we've got, matter of fact, like I said, I was ready to retire last December, and my guys really made a great pitch, and they're like, few more years. It's like, well, we'll see. But I'm still here, still doing it. So they made a good pitch, and they convinced me to stick around a little longer.
That's awesome. No, that's super. That's an amazing journey that you had coming up from wanting to be an accountant and then actually turning your head to maybe being a business coach, and then seeing the potential that you had within business and starting. Now you have multiple companies. But like you said earlier, it's true. You'll get a lot of the older generation shops, maybe not even shops, but the trades, more the trades side of the businesses. They're great at what they do. They're great at working hard, and they can get stuff done, but they don't know that business aspect, like you said. And that's where, like you said, a lot of the companies fail. And I think it's one of those things. A lot of the people that I've been speaking with on the podcast, they've really brought out that they've been taking that extra step to gain knowledge on how to run businesses, getting mentors, getting coaches, and really bearing down on a business, because especially with this digital day and age, it's really hard to become successful within a business, and you really need to stand out from the crowd to do that. And that's amazing that you had that gentleman there for you. Well, you were there for him actually as a coach, right. And that's super cool. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a fun story, and he was very intelligent guy, and I would argue that I learned more from him than he did from me, But I was trying to be more hands-on with the business then, and he saw right through it. He's just like, you're capable of way more than this, and I hadn't thought about it. I was like, I got a job to do. I'm here. Let's do the job. Let's work the numbers. Let's and your expenses are out of control. If we, he's like, well, we need to earn more money. I'm like, okay, well, if you throw enough money at it, we can fix almost any problem if you throw enough money at it. And that goes in any industry. But the question is, do we need to? I'm a big advocate of saying you can't back your way into a profit. You can't save your way into a profit, But that also is considering that your expenses are reasonable. If you're out there and you're just blowing cash, well, now we need to tame down the expenses and get those into a reasonable number. And it's not always about making more money. It's about being more efficient and doing better with what you have. Then of course, once you get that under control, now to your point, we talked about earlier with what you offer, once you, if your business is not, if your expenses are under control and your profits aren't maximized, scaling the business is not your next step. You know, you've got to control the expenses, you've got to maximize the profits, or, you know, a little more efficient than there. But once you do that and you have it under control, now scaling the business just got, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it got a lot easier for sure.
For sure. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And a lot of business owners, even if you are really inclined business-wise, a lot of people need that outside look to see what they're missing, because a lot of businesses really miss the home run aspect of it, right? They're missing that, they're missing one aspect that they're not seeing because they're not taking that step back and looking at it. I just wanted to add that in.
So close to it. Yeah, but you're right. You know, when it's your baby, you're so close. I mean, like, for instance, this is, when I do my podcast, we talk small business. One of my favorite questions is, especially for someone who's been doing it a long time, I'm going to ask you this question in about 5 years with your podcast and your business, and you're going to have a great answer, I'll guarantee you. But I like to ask people, it's like, give me a scenario, real, you know, that you've had where you had just this epiphany, where you had this fantastic idea, it's going to revolutionize your business, maybe even the industry, it's just going to be great. And then you execute it, and now you're looking back on it 3 years ago, 5, 20 years ago, whatever the case is, and you're going, what was I thinking? That was the dumbest thing ever. I mean, you know, I should have seen that was not going to work. And I said, because in business, if you've been doing it long enough, we all have at least one of those stories, at least one.
For sure.
And it makes for great content, and it's great. It's, if you want to communicate with people, you can ask questions, you can deliver answers, you can give a speech. Nothing communicates with people better than storytelling. You know, it's just, and when you can get to that point, you'll get people's ear, and they'll learn from you, and you'll learn from them. You know, I mean, I talk way more than I should, as I'm sure you're getting that, but you know, that's a piece of what we do, is the storytelling side. And Broadway Car Care, we knew what we were doing, right? We're going to fix cars.
Yeah.
We named Broadway Car Care, and the first, I would bet at least a third of my phone calls for the first 2 years was people wanting us to shampoo carpets, how much to wax, how much to, you know, get a stain out, all this detailing work, you know, cleaning cars. And it's like, we put in alternators, we fix brakes, we don't shampoo carpets, you know, we don't wash cars. But Broadway Car Care, that name, you know, we knew what we meant, but obviously we didn't put nearly enough thought into it. You know, we didn't have anything about repair or anything like that in the name. And so, it took years to get that out of our reputation.
For sure. No, it's a great point, and that's even bigger now, right? With you have all these social media platforms, you have digital marketing aspects of business now, that if your name doesn't line up with if you have a great name, your marketing is going to be so much easier, and people are going to know exactly what you do by your name, right? A lot of a business responds on what the name is, and it's like you said, Broadway Car Care could be in anything, right?
Right.
And that's a great example. And going back to what you said, going back to what you said on people wanting to hear stories, people want to hear experiences that people have been through, so they avoid that mistake, right? And it's and we're at that day and age where a lot of people are actually speaking about the issues they've been through, and it's actually super helpful for a lot of companies, like our podcast right now. We're going to be speaking a lot about business, and a lot of people will get little tips on what they should not do within a company.
Well, podcasts started wasn't it like 2005 or 6 with I'm drawing a blank on his name. He's a comedian, but he had
Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Well, Joe Rogan was on his podcast, and they were drinking a beer, and he was sitting on the couch, and I can't think of the guy's name, but he had his desk, and they literally cracked open a couple bottles of beer, and they're sitting there, and Joe Rogan tells me, says, this could be the future of media. But that was in like the mid 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, I think, something like that, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been earlier than that. But yeah, Rogan was a guest of his, And it's just ironic to hear Rogan, very young, this is before Fear Factor, before any of that. And he said, this could change the face of media. This could be the future. And now you look at, the Joe Rogan experience, the guy's a phenom in this. But but prior to that, when two guys like you and I, we're not celebrities. Nobody, I don't mean to put you in the ring, but we're not famous, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of opportunity, 20 years ago, what kind of opportunity did you and I have to get a message out there to the masses,
Yeah.
This changes everything. And it just takes a couple of your reels or shorts to hit it big, and all of a sudden you've got attention. And now, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good time, and you can really get a message out there. So, keep the content relevant and interesting.
It's super cool for sure. And the digital age is amazing for business as well. Not even like start in your own, or say you're running a company, same aspect. Even if you're not running a podcast, you still have that content to post to the masses. And a lot of the best content is education content, right? If you can educate your customers, if you can educate your client base, they're going to stick around because they want to know. They want to know some of the information that you have, and if you can give them valuable information, they're going to stick around and they're going to follow you. And it's a huge aspect that a lot of companies still haven't really grasped yet either.
Right. Well, and let's be honest. Most of us, as a human being, we're not extremely memorable, right? Yeah. And again, I'm not throwing stones, but most of us just aren't very memorable. That people aren't going to, if they meet us once in passing, it's going to be, in and out of their consciousness, right? They're not going to remember us long term unless we tell a story. It's people don't remember you or me, but if we make them feel something, people don't remember people. People remember how people make you feel. Yeah. And that's, to me, that's a big part of that. The storytelling, you can touch someone's emotions, whether it's fun, you're laughing like a comedian, you're crying, you're mad. But all those emotions, people remember how you make them feel more than they're going to remember your name,
For sure. And that's
when I have clients, have you ever heard of the Mayo Clinic? I know you're not local to Minnesota.
No, I haven't. No.
Okay. Well, Mayo Clinic, they're like a world-renowned hospital, and they're based out of Rochester. They're literally 3 blocks from my shop, and so a large percentage of our clientele is Mayo Clinic employees, doctors, nurses, technicians, and point being, they're in the medical field. They're not working on their cars on the weekend. They're not, that's just not their world. And so one of my favorite things is when I'm explaining to someone that, this thing sounds like an airplane going down the road. I get that, so you bring it in, it's like, okay, you got a wheel bearing that's going out. And I'm like, and so do you know why that makes that noise? And there's like, no, just when can it be fixed? Because money's not much of an issue for most of these folks. They're good people. They work hard and they make a really good living. And so they know it's broke. I need it fixed. So it doesn't really matter what it costs, unless you're going to tell me I should get rid of the car. It's something ridiculous. But let's say, well, I can explain to you what's going on. And they're like, oh, no, I'm not a car person, whatever. I'm like, no, but if you've got and we don't have to, because I have customers that they literally just, they bring it, they drop it off broken, they want to pick it up fixed. And then they don't ask for estimates. They just want it fixed. They know, they trust us. They know that whatever the price is, that's what it is. We're not going to, take advantage of them. But then you have the other people on the opposite end of the spectrum. But a lot of our customers are like, no, I wouldn't understand it if you told me. I'm like, well, give me a little credit. I said, I've been doing this for 30 years, 22 where I'm at in my own shop, but I've been, in and out of the business for over 30 years. I was like, I'm not going to, I said, I'll give you a little education. I said, I'm not going to start with Henry Ford in the first assembly line. We're just going to talk about a wheel bearing, and a 2015 Caravan. We're going to focus on the one thing that you need today, and it'll, we'll have a 1.5, 2-minute conversation, and you'll feel better about where you're spending your money.
For sure.
And most people are really accepting to that. You're very, very receptive to that, where they're just like, well, okay. And then we just talk about a wheel bearing. We explain, did you notice that when you veer to the left, it gets louder? Well, that's because you're loading up the right side, or whatever the case is. You make the explanation, and then it all kind of makes sense. They're like, oh, so then at the end, you get, well, how many we have to replace all 4 of them? No, we're just going to do the one that's bad. What about the other 3? Well, they're mechanical. They will fail, but it could be a week from now. It may not be while you own the vehicle. So we're not going to worry about those until it's a problem. But now you know what you're listening for. So, next year or next fall or whatever, you can call and go, I was driving this thing. It sounded like an airplane. And when I veer to the right, it makes noise. So I think it's my left front wheel bearing. And I said, your friends are going to go, how would you know that? And I said, you can just, that's be our little secret. And they just, they just kind of make a joke, they make you laugh. But when you talk to them about something that they're not familiar with, but you treat them like a human being, again, it's how you make people feel. And that's how you build that customer, loyalty, when they know they can trust you and they know that you're going to take the time. And they hear my phone ringing in the background and they know that there's other people there. They know we're busy, but take the time, make sure that they understand that they're a human being and they matter. And they'll be with you for life.
Yeah, and it's valuable information to a customer as long as you explain it the way that they can comprehend it, because that's a lot of things. You'll get technicians that maybe don't know how to explain it the best to a customer.
Oh yeah.
And that's the reason they don't want to understand, right?
Yep, and actually, say with your technicians, that's we always joke with my clients, because I'm like, I talk to the people, they talk to the cars. It works out better that way, and we make a joke, and everybody kind of giggles, and even the mechanics, my guys, they're just kind of laugh, going, yeah, he's not wrong, and just kind of, we'll be back here. But yeah, it's take good care of them. And then people are like, well, what did you find? Like, oh, you don't want me looking at your car. I'm not the right. I've got guys for that, but I'll decipher, their gibberish into real world speak that you and I can discuss and understand. And yeah, the people appreciate that, but there's the business side of it and there's the trade side of it. And, even if you are good at both, it's hard to make a good living when you have to wear all the hats.
For sure. So, yeah, definitely.
So it is good to have, if you're going to split the workload up, put somebody up front, put somebody in back, and make sure they're both damn good at what they do. And they have to understand what the other one does, but they don't have to be there and do it every day and be proficient or efficient at it.
Yeah, no, that makes 100%. And that kind of goes back to the same, right? There's business owners that are amazing tradespeople, and there's business owners that are amazing business owners, and there's a gap, right?
Right. There's two different things, completely different things. Yep.
Yeah. It's huge, and I think we're starting to see more and more people get involved with actually understanding how to run a business and getting that mentorship, getting that coaching or that knowledge. Because it's so easy to find now, and you need it to really succeed in business.
Well, there's so much to it. When I first got into the business, your number one marketing was the phone book.
Yeah.
When's the last time you touched an actual phone book? Right.
I probably grabbed it out of the drawer when I was like 4 years old. What the heck's this?
What is this? Yeah, but that's reality now, and that was a mainstay. When I was younger, and you'd have to decide between billboards, radio, television, and television was awfully expensive. So most of your local, most of your TV ads were like national companies. They weren't local. You didn't see the local appliance store. You'd get an ad for General Electric and Whirlpool, but you wouldn't see Bob's Appliances that was downtown on TV. That was radio, and again, billboards were a big thing. And direct mailers, people did some direct mail or catalogs, that kind of thing. Yeah. Now it's like none of that really exists. The billboards do, radio, television, but I don't know that television got a lot cheaper, but I think everything else got more expensive, and all of a sudden television now does make sense for the small entrepreneurs in some cases. So you do see more of that now.
Depending on what they're offering as a business, and especially with all the online stores now, right? You can. Right. If you run an online store, you can order a piece of clothing from anywhere in North America, and it shows up right to your house, and it's a great way to market it, right?
Within a day or two. Yeah, quickly. Yeah.
It's crazy.
I know about a mile and a half, 2 miles from my house, Amazon just bought 23 acres in our industrial park that's right on the edge of our little town of 5,000-6,000 people, and they're putting up a huge Amazon distribution center.
It's crazy.
And that's going to make it tough on some of the small businesses because they're going to need help, and and they're going to pay $22 to $26 an hour with no experience. And you look at these small mom and pop places, that's going to be hard to compete with. Because
for sure.
they're paying a lot less than that in a usually in that mid-teens is a good starting wage here. And for non-skilled labor, for someone without any real experience, and Amazon's going to blow that out of the water. And so top of the wages, they're going to need a lot of people. It's not like they're going to bring in 12 people. They're going to bring in a few hundred, and they're going to really deplete that entry level job market. So the Taco Bells, the McDonald's of the world, they're going to have to go automated or do something, in my opinion, to keep up here in our local region anyway.
Yeah, that's huge, especially for your region. Yeah, in a small town, right? And it's going to take its toll on even here in like the past 2 or 3 years, you've heard a lot of malls shutting down, right? You don't see as many clothing stores staying open because it's so convenient to just go on your phone and buy it right away. You found it. It's cheaper. It's cheaper than buying it in store somehow, and it gets delivered to your door. And it's
and when you have an Amazon depot like this that's going to be right in our town, when one of our daughters lives in Texas, and she's in the same situation. It's like she has an Amazon distribution center, like, I don't know, 6 or 7 miles from her. If I go in and she's on her Amazon account, if she orders something and I don't pay attention, I'm on her address, it'll tell me, oh, you can have this delivered in 2 hours.
That's
and it's
crazy.
Like, 2 hours. Then I look, I've got, it's Alyssa's address. So then I kick back to our address. Then it's like tomorrow or the next day. It's like 1 or 2 days. But when we get this their distribution center in here, you're going to have 2-hour delivery. Well, in 2 hours, if I get in my car and drive, the 12 miles to Rochester, which is our town that has most of the, the stores in it, by the time I do all that messing around, I'm going to spend at least an hour just to drive to Rochester and get it. Where I can be contemplating something else and it shows up at my door in 2 hours. And again, like you said, if I pay $20 for it at a store, I'm probably paying $12 for it on Amazon. It's like,
it's crazy.
It's going to be hard it's going to be hard on local business. It really is, for sure.
For sure.
But with that, now you got to. But now, if that's the case, if you can't beat them, join them. Can you get your products on Amazon? And now can you get into a nationwide or global market rather than just trying to sell to that 5,000 or 6,000 people in Stewartville or the 100,000 people in Rochester? Can we take advantage of that? Like, well, yeah, but I can't sell it for $12. Your $20 product, you probably can sell it for $12 if you could sell 1,000 of them.
Yeah.
And you don't have the overhead of your store. You start streamlining your expenses and the volume. You can compete there.
Yeah.
But if you want to just cry in the corner, poor me, and be the victim, well, you're allowed to do that. But those people go broke too.
For sure, yeah, and it's just the way of the day and age, right? Just like marketing within a company. If this is the way that you're really going to make your footprint and still be an active company, it's kind of a step you have to take, right? You can't you can't sit back and wait for it to happen. You have to take action and really be ahead of. You got to be ahead of the game for sure.
Yeah. And, I mean, very few people keep pace. You're one of the few that's in the lead, or you're one of the many that's fallen behind. And unfortunately, so many people fall behind, and it's hard to catch up. It's in any industry. For sure.
And I love Amazon, but I also feel for the small companies because their mom and pop stores, it's been a family business for so long, and they have a great community product, but there's still people want to save money at the end of the day. People don't care about the legacy that it's dragged on, and at the end of the day, you need to get with the times, I guess is the best way to say it, right?
Well, that's why I say I think at that point you've got to kind of look at it going, do I need a website? Do I not need a website, and I just need to get on Etsy or Amazon or eBay, Shopify? Is there something I can do like that? Get a Wix site that has all the e-commerce integrated into it. Do I need to take a couple community ed classes and learn some of this stuff? Or jump on and get a good friend of mine dropped like $3,000 on Facebook training to learn the algorithms, and which it's great information. I don't know if it's worth that much, But there again, if I give you a $3,000 budget to market your company tomorrow, it doesn't go very far.
No,
So,
not at all.
You'll burn through that $3,000 in a hurry, and nobody's going to guarantee you a return.
Yeah, yeah.
So maybe that $3,000 on the Facebook ads, when you consider everything a lot of what you put out there until you boost it, most of it's free, and even the boosting is very inexpensive. So, again, it's all, you really got to sit down and kind of consider, was that worth that? Maybe so. It's because, like I said, $3,000 doesn't go very far in marketing.
It does you about a month, right? Month in ads. You're supposed to give or take spend $100 a day to really make it worth it. Because if you're spending $10 or $5 a day, you might as well just throw your money in the air, because you're not going to get that traction. You need to at least throw a $100 bill in the air, because someone might find that and think it's the best thing ever, right? And that's just the best way to describe it. So
it's like going to the casino with a $20 bill. Is there a chance you'll strike gold? There's a chance, but it's pretty slim.
Yeah. For
you
sure.
walk into a casino with a pile of cash, well, maybe. Again, more risk, more reward. But that's always, risk mitigation is a huge part of small business. Like I say, especially when I was younger, I was so conservative. I know I missed out on some really good opportunities because they just weren't a sure thing, and that's where I felt like I had to be. I thought I don't want to be another statistic. I don't want to be part of that 94% that doesn't make it their first year. I want to make sure, and it's got to be something that kind of sings to you. Something you really like, and that makes it easier too when you're passionate about it.
For sure, and it's and that's one of the biggest things, right? You want to make sure that you love what you're doing, right? You don't want to start a business and not be a fan of it, because you're going to dread going to work even just working. You need to make sure that you're happy showing up to work every day, and that being a business owner, you need to make sure that your people are happy showing up to work every day. Maybe there's some aspect that they don't like, but you can change it a little bit to make it super fun. I was speaking to a representative that worked in a warehouse, and he's built up a couple warehouses, making them way more efficient than they were before.
Sure.
And they had an office of salespeople, and he said that he gave them the opportunity to sell some of the overstock, and they could get a commission off the overstock. And he said once he did that and the salespeople got to actually experience getting that commission back, he said they came back to him and said that they've never loved coming to work as much as they do now, because they get that excitement of getting maybe some more money at the end of the day, and they get excitement of making phone calls and really selling and practicing their skills.
Well, that's part of it. It's like, you've got to find that trigger, because not everybody is motivated by money, but a lot are. And if that's their motivation, if that's then do that. But especially when you're a small business owner, right? I mean, Jeff Bezos, he's not gonna know what motivates every Amazon employee. I mean, Elon Musk, he's not out there. He doesn't know what motivates every Tesla employee, or SpaceX or Boring Company, all the things he's got going on. But I do believe that both of those guys, they know what motivates their top tier of employees, because they talk to them, they know them. And if you can instill that in them, then the next layer, they will instill it on the next layer and the next layer. And, it's really about Gary V. I don't know if you ever watch him. I love his pitch about hiring and firing. And he's like, and they said, what's your, have you ever heard his pitch on, how do you know you're hiring the right guy or right gal?
No, share it if you don't mind.
Yep. Well, I'll leave out the Gary V verbiage, as keep it a clean podcast. But he says you don't. He said the biggest fantasy out there is that you're good at hiring. He said none of us are good at hiring. You have to become, if you want to be good at hiring, give it up. You're not going to be good at hiring. You have to be good at firing. You have to be good at, because when you if I'm going to hire you or you're going to hire me, we're going to sit down to a phone interview, maybe an in-person interview. They're not going to be 6 hours long, right? We're not going to go hang out for 6 months to decide if you're going to hire me or not. We're going to have a 10-minute interview, 5 minutes on the phone, and you're going to, it's like speed dating and then getting married at the end of the 7 minutes, right? You wouldn't do that. So, but in hiring, that's what we do. We hire people to run our companies with a couple interviews and a good referral from someone that they put on the list. And so that's Gary Vee saying, he's like, so you don't know them until you start working with them and seeing how they perform. And when you don't like it, don't get caught up. Don't let your ego tank, your situation, because people don't like, he said, a lot of CEOs, a lot of management, they don't like to fire because they hired them. So when they fire them, they have to admit, well, I hired the wrong guy. So it's a bad reflection on them. And he says, get over yourself. Get that. If you hired the wrong guy, get him out of there. Get her out of there, whatever the case is, and move on to the next one. And he said, if you got to hire and fire 6 people to get to the right one, well, then be glad that you fired 6 and found number 7. That's the answer. And I just love that, because it's like, no matter how old you are, how much experience you have, people are going to show you, especially in the short term, they're going to show you the person you want to see, or the person they think you want to see. Yeah. And it's not hard to pull the wool over your eyes in a short series of interviews. Even companies that do 4 or 5 interviews, usually they're not 4 or 5 interviews with the same person. So that interviewee gets a chance to pull the wool over the eyes of 4 or 5 people instead of 1 or 2. Well, if they interview well. So I'm a big fan of, I'm not a big fan of firing people. I absolutely hate firing people. But you do have to become good at that, and then you have to become good at firing. You have to realize you're not good at hiring. And I'll say that to people I've never met, and they argue, and it's like, well, you can argue, but you don't know these people. If you don't, it's different if it's a childhood friend, it's a next door neighbor that you've known for years. You get a better idea who these people are. But when you're just answering an ad, and taking somebody off the street with a resume, that's not enough. That whatever you look like on paper, that's not. Again, we're back to, you might be the best at what you do that's out there, but if you can't talk to people, how do you make other people feel? And if you're in that industry where you have to talk to people, you have to make them feel good. And if you can't do that, it doesn't matter how good of whatever you're doing is. We'll find somebody else. Yeah. And yes, I think I love that pitch from Gary Vee. And like I say, his presentation, it's way more colorful than mine. But
Gary Vee is a brilliant individual. He's super smart, and he has a ton of knowledge in every aspect. And he's really it took him a lot of time to get where he is now, just as it takes everyone, right? It takes your time to build up and now look at the information and the knowledge that he has to share with the masses, and it's super cool that he is sharing that knowledge.
In demand. Yeah, I mean, the guy is in demand. It's you look at, you try to book Gary Vee on your podcast. I mean, it won't happen. We're not going to get him to do our podcast. It's, the guy's got so much going on out there. It's awesome. It's, and then you look at him, you look at Jordan Peterson. I mean, there's another guy that I think, he's from your neck of the woods, right? I mean, he's Canadian. Doesn't sound like your government treated him very well, but I guess, you only get his side of the story, but it's not too hard to believe.
No, not at all. I have a question for you. So when advising new entrepreneurs, what is the most common mistake that you see, and how do you help them navigate that issue?
What I would say, number one is underfunded. I really believe that. And no, that's not to say that you have to have a ton of money to start a business, but it's now, I don't know how it is in Canada, right? But as an American, most people I know, if you drive by their house, you look at their car, you go into their home, you look at how they're dressed. If the guy makes $50,000 a year, he looks like he makes 100. If he makes 100,000 a year, he looks like he makes 200. Americans are very tough. So many Americans live outside of their means. So why I say that to set this up is, if you have $50,000 to start a business, then you can't write your startup plan to spend $50,000, because you don't know what you're going to have for sales, and you can project that, but you don't know what you have. So if you have a budget of $50,000, you can't make a startup plan of spending $50,000. You're going to be broke when you're done, and if the business doesn't take off immediately, then you're screwed. Yeah. And that's how America functions. I mean, seriously, it really, that's how and I mean, there's exceptions to every rule, and a lot of us don't live outside of our means, but a lot of us do. And so being underfunded doesn't mean you have to have a ton of money. It means you have to understand how much money you have, and you have to really understand the industry you're getting into to make sure that you don't spend all your money too early. You know, it's like the age-old thing. It's like, well, how much do I need to retire? Well, I don't know. When are you going to die? Well,
Yeah.
we don't know how long we're going to live, so I don't know how much money I really need to keep with. But what I can't, so I can't set a date to when I'm going to expire, but I can change my lifestyle. If I decide I want to retire early and I don't have as much money as I'd like, well, I can change my lifestyle a little bit, right? And if you don't want to, well, then I'll work a little longer, or I'll invest a little, whatever. But so that's my biggest thing is I see so many people, whatever their business is. I mean, okay, use yours as an example.
Sure,
if you went out, if you went out tomorrow and you went out and rented a space in a strip mall, right, a little office space, and you buy a desk and you lay some carpet and you put in some new lights and you get your internet set, you get a new computer, and you got to have a cool phone, and you got to have, all the things, right? And you get this whole office all set up, and 3 months from now, you're all incorporated and you're ready to roll. You've got your insurances all lined up. You've paid, just been forking out the money, right? Hand over fist. Monday morning comes in, you unlock that door Monday morning, you click on the open sign, and you go sit at the desk and stare at the phone and wait for it to ring. That's a terrible way to start a business.
For
And
sure.
and obviously, but that's how a lot of people do it. They spend, and they go out of budget, and their budget probably wasn't accurate in the first place. They probably already budgeted more than they could really afford, and then they went outside of that budget. And now it's like, if you're not gangbusters right on day one, you're in a hole. You might not be bankrupt on day one, but you're in a hole that you'll never dig out of.
For sure.
And now you're also trying to find investors, and you're giving away percentages of your company, and you're just looking for a life raft. You're trying to figure out who's going to save me. And the banks, if you go to the banks or investors with a solid business plan and experience, the money's out there. But let me tell you, the minute you start having trouble, anyone who said they were interested in investing in you, whether it be a bank or an investor, another entrepreneur, a family member, as soon as you're struggling, that well is dry. They're just like, I'll call you, don't call me. And it's like, wait a minute, but 6 months ago you're ready to invest with me. It's like, yeah, but we thought you were going to do better. And the money dries up.
No, it's true.
And it's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, for me, that's the biggest thing, and it is underfunded. But you have to understand what that means. It doesn't just mean you didn't have enough money. It means you planned too big for the money you had.
Yeah. No, and again, that goes back to knowledge, right? You need to know business before stepping into business, right? Like that goes all back to knowledge. And my biggest thing,
mechanic. But I'm a great mechanic. Well, you are a great mechanic. What do you know about business? Well, I'm a great mechanic. Yeah. Different question, different answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like I said, it goes back to knowledge. And I think one thing I'm really set on is knowledge is how do I say it? Basically, you can spend as much money as you want on knowledge. You're always going to retain that knowledge and have that knowledge to share. You can spend as much money as you want, and it's going to be valuable within your lifetime, because you can always use that knowledge for any aspect, whether it be business, whether it be something you're really passionate about, whether it be knowledge about how grass grows. You can use that knowledge and leverage it, especially with this day and age with social media. Yep. And then again, going back to sharing that knowledge, people love learning things, and that's it's a huge aspect in life.
Well, I mentioned Jordan Peterson earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you look at Jordan Peterson. As far as I know, I don't believe that he's a psychologist or psychologist, I believe, but he doesn't practice anymore, and he makes way more. I mean, he's making millions now.
Yeah.
He didn't make millions when he was doing what got him here. But now he's a social media influencer icon that is making, he's selling books. The guy's everywhere.
Yeah.
And he's making way more money than Rogan. Look at Joe Rogan. The guy was a TV star. Well, kind of a TV star. He was never huge on TV, like Fear Factor. It was a fun show, but it wasn't, he wasn't Tom Cruise. But now you look at him, 100 million plus followers. The guy's getting 1 billion views every few months or in a year. It's like, are you kidding? This guy's it's crazy.
It is.
But it works, So, yeah, you don't, you once you get your name, once you get that whatever you're doing to hit, then you've got to be able to pivot. You've got to be able to adapt, and now take advantage of that.
And it's all about building a brand, right? Whether it be personal or whether it be your business brand, it's all about building a brand and getting your name out there, and that's the most important thing, right? You need to build a foundation, a solid foundation with a solid team, and then expand that. And that's basically the key to a successful business. Solid foundation, and then you start reaching out and really making a difference in community, in people, in customers, and the best way to do it is using your phone.
Right. That's right. I mean, social media and like building your brand. A little merchandise never hurts, you know. And once you've got even when you've got something that's not exciting, if you have a cool logo, something that people want to wear, you know, that's I mean, one of my companies is Design HQ, and we do like apparel. We do like T-shirts. This is a logo from one of the clothing lines we have. It's called Second Above All. So in America, you know, Second Amendment, it's all about the right to bear arms, the right to own firearms, and I own a gun shop also. So I'm a big Second Amendment guy. I certified permit to carry instructor. So if you come to America and you want to buy a gun, once you're you don't even have to be a citizen actually to get your permit to buy a firearm, but you have hoops to jump through. But I can help you with that whole process, you know. And so with the clothing line, it's just all kind of, snappy sayings. Like, one of the shirts is it's a sniper, and it says, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Those kinds of generic sayings and fun stuff like that. But that's what we do with that clothing line. And then Design HQ, the parent company, we focus mainly on, like, for your business, you give us your name or your podcast, we'll do up a logo. Like behind me here is the logo for my podcast, the Small Business Talk with Jerry. We put that on hats and shirts and jackets and golf towels and cups and, keychains, whatever you want to do with it. But again, brand awareness, build the brand.
Yeah, no, that's it's the biggest thing, right? You look at all the big influencers. You look at Gary Vee, you look at Alex Hormozi, you look at Jordan Peterson, you look at I don't know if you're in the health field, but Gary Brecka.
I love that guy. Yep.
Love that guy. I'm a huge fan of Gary Brecka, but they all have that personal brand, and they're sharing knowledge, part of the brand, right? It's all how it works out, and it's super cool how love Gary Brecka. He's such a great guy. He has so much knowledge about the health.
One of my local clinics here in Rochester, they're in my SBR group, and they have the methylated. Gary Brecka talks about the
vitamins.
But it's it's a methylated test, like it's a blood draw or a test do. The gene, the methylated gene test, or
the gene mutation test.
There you go. Yep. And so now we have a clinic in Rochester that does that. And
that's cool.
I'm actually going to have that here in the next week or so. I've got an appointment for beginning of next week.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're gonna get. I learned that through listening to Gary Brecka, and he was on PBT's Paul Bet-David's podcast. And there's another guy that I really like. That's another guy I would love to meet someday. He's got a lot of insight. I'm not a Yankees fan. He's part owner of the Yankees. I'm not a Yankees fan, but we can get past that.
Gary is huge to even our food system. I know we're getting a little bit off automotive and everything, but it's something that needs to be spoken about because he's really put a spotlight, and especially with RFK as well. Right. He's doing an amazing job trying to bring back the health of America, and it's something that no one really looked at in the past since COVID. It's kind of been a focus, right? And it's nice to have people getting that knowledge out there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's nice that RFK is really taking that initiative and making a difference, and it's helping us here in Canada as well, and it's something that hasn't been looked at, and it gets run by money, right? It's going to take a long time to get some of them bad foods out of our systems, but if there's people talking about it, people are slowly going to stop buying those crap foods, and what are they going to do? They're going to have to go out of business because they can't afford to stay on the shelves, and it's I think we need more health influencers out there for sure. Yeah,
absolutely. I know I went through some health issues myself last summer, and I was really overweight. I mean, I was 340 pounds, a year, 8 months ago. And as of yesterday morning, I've lost about 130 pounds.
Wow.
In 8 months, 7.5 months.
Amazing.
Like that. It's a lot of work and it's miserable, but it's time. And all this. I'm conservative in more than one way, I should say, I guess. But it's funny that we have Donald Trump as president, ran as a Republican, and virtually everybody around him that's doing good things is a previous Democrat. Including himself.
Uh-oh.
He was a Democrat for years, and so. But you have RFK. There's a guy that if he would have ran for president, I'd have voted for him. I have a lot of respect for him. And you look at Elon Musk. You look at what Musk did to kind of further the cause, and he was a guy that didn't want to get political. Joe Rogan said he wouldn't even have Trump on his podcast, and then when they actually met and he did do the podcast, Rogan completely changed his opinion about him, and Rogan's still not. You still can't call Rogan a conservative by any stretch. He's definitely not a Republican, but right is right, and I think that's the thing that impresses me, because you never see a Democrat bring in a Republican, you never see a Republican bring in a Democrat into their cabinet, and when you look at what Trump has done, I do believe he's doing a much better job this go round than the last one as far as putting the right people in the right positions.
For sure.
And again, not to get political, but one of the many, many, many things that Trump took a lot of heat for was appointing all these people in his first term, and then he fired so many and replaced them. And it was like, oh, he's incompetent, he can't, all this. And then when I hear the Gary V thing that we talked about earlier, I'm just like, so are you trying to tell me that the last 75 years or 100 years of presidents who've appointed all these positions to people they really never met or didn't know and never fired a single one of them, you mean every president we've had in the past has been just an absolute ace at hiring, when we now know none of us are good at hiring? That was just the good old boy club. So did Trump make mistakes by hiring the wrong people? Yeah, I think he did. But he fired them, and he tried new people. Our presidents of the past, I think they made the same mistakes. They hired the wrong people. They just didn't fire them. And Republicans and Democrats, not trying to pick a side. I'm just saying presidents in general. And I don't know how the government works in Canada exactly. I know it's a different system from what we use. But it's still, you kind of have that conservative and liberal, battle back
Same
and
thing.
forth. And it just doesn't, when you have that two-party system, nothing good, very, very few good things get done repeatedly. It's always, we can't agree. We can't do this because they agree with us. We can't do that. It's like, well, how about we just worry about what's good for the people? I mean,
exactly.
This isn't that difficult to understand. But anyway, we should probably get back to the automotive side of things. I get sidetracked.
Well, I just have one opinion on it, not to be super political, but with what Trump's doing with the tariffs and everything, I think it's actually great for the economy and great for both countries, because we've been really dependent on each other, right, over the past years upon years. I think it's something that's really going to help both economies strive, being able to be out there for ourselves. It might put us way down at the moment, but looking ahead in the future, it's really going to boost the economy of the States, because you guys can be an individual country. Canada, we can now take care of our own things and be an individual country as well. And I think it looks bad at the moment, but I think in the end game, it's really going to help a lot both countries individually. And it's really going to separate. It's really going to separate from business aspect. It's going to separate the businesses that are looking. It's like COVID, right? Businesses had to operate a different way to get through it, where if you didn't change your operations, you fell really low. So it's going to be the same way. It's going to make a gap between the people who are going to do very well and the people that aren't going to do very well. And if you can be a business that can adapt and change to challenges really quick and try those new innovations and keep pushing forward, you're really going to have a solid business behind you.
Adapt or die. I mean, that's it's very simple. And I had an aunt who very liberal and just hates Trump, So no matter, I mean, she is one that no matter what he does, it's going to be terrible. Not wrong. It's going to be life-threatening, terrible, world-ending. And they're getting ready to retire. They're quite a bit older than me. They're getting ready to retire. And she was just crying about how these tariffs and it's going to tank the economy. Trump's going to force a recession, and she's going to be broke and all this. And how dare him? She couldn't believe it, and just really having a tantrum. And I said, "Are you retiring tomorrow?" She's like, "Well, I want to retire in 2026. I'm like, "Good. Give this 6 or 7 months." I said, "Well, get through it's going to be painful. There's no question.
Yeah.
When you tear the Band-Aid off, it hurts for a minute. There's no question. And that's how this is going to, it's a very, oversimplification of what's going on, but it's true." I said, "Give it 6 or 7 months." And I said, "And it will come back. And I guarantee you, your retirement accounts will come back in 2026. They will be stronger than they were last week. I guarantee it." And she's just, you just love Trump. You'd agree with him on no matter what. It's like, I don't love Trump. Again, I don't like watching him speak. I don't care for all of the name calling, and that's not very presidential, right? I don't think he's wrong in a lot of cases, but that's not what I expect from my president. But how does he make me feel? I'm a small business owner. I'm a U.S. citizen. I love how he makes me feel as far as my bank account, my income. I mean, he's done the pride that we can get back into our country. I love all of that. So I don't really necessarily like him, but I like how he makes me feel and how he supports my business. And I said, these tariffs are going to be great because, well, Canada's a good example. There's a lot of cases where Canada was really taking advantage and had these completely unequal tariffs. And to even that out, that's not a bad thing for Canada. I think I think it'll be good for both countries. But at a glance, if you only look at one piece of the pie, one piece of the puzzle, it's, we can make it look awful for the U.S., unfair. We can make it look like it's going to bankrupt Canada. No, it's not. It's going to be good for both. And other countries around the world, as this goes, it's going to be great. So you fast forward, about 6 weeks, and our stock market is right back where it was. All of our retirement counts, everything we have is back where it was. Gas prices are going down. Groceries are going down. The system is working. And I called her, and she was mad because I called her and I said, I apologize. I guaranteed you this would all come back in 6 or 7 months. And I said, boy, was I wrong. I had no idea it would come back in 6 weeks. And she's just furious. She goes, you just had to call me. I was like, I did. You have no idea how warm that makes me feel inside to be able to call you and go, what are you going to cry about now? What did he do today? Because you can't complain about the economy. Our economy's stronger than it's been since he was in last time. So, you just love that guy. It's like, again, I love that the country is doing well. I said, the fact that you want our president to fail, that's terrible. If our president fails, that means we fail as a country. That's who in their right mind wants your own? You live in Canada. You don't want Canada to fail.
No, not at all.
So that's that whole. There's just our liberals here. Some of them, the really far left, are just so deranged, but the far right is too. Again, I'm conservative, but I wouldn't call myself far right. I don't believe in any of the extremes. Stay in the middle. And if I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat, we both want the same things, or we should. We just gotta probably bicker about how we get there, but we both want the same things. There's no reason for an all-out argument or violence. It's like, what do you want? Well, I want to be successful. What do you want for your kids? I want them to be successful. I want them to be safe. We all want the same things, and we've lost touch on that somewhere, and it's really sad.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's one of those things, right? Obviously, us as business owners, small business owners, we're not going to change it. So we have to look at the positive out of it, right? It's just like anything in life, even running a business. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to have challenges, but the only thing they do is grow you as a company and make you get to that next step and open your eyes to look at new ways of running a business or new ways on how to take that next step up and really turn everything around in a company.
Right. I like to, when I'm working with small businesses, I do like to tell them have you ever heard the joke, it's the 2 best days about owning a boat is the two happiest days are the day you buy it and the day you sell it. Okay, I mean, we're in Minnesota. There's a land of 10,000 lakes, so everybody has a boat here, and they're a pain in the ass. I mean, boats are expensive and they break down, and they're just But so that's been kind of the joke is the two happiest days as a boat owner is the day you buy it and the day you sell it. And but as a business owner, I'd like your take on this, if you don't mind me asking a question.
Yeah.
What I like to stand by, I like to say the hardest day as a business owner, in my opinion, is as a business owner, there's this constant barrage of problems, of setbacks, of some things are you're doing, that you screwed up, I screw up, but a lot of them are out of our control. Like you just said, we can't change. If Donald Trump makes a great decision or makes a terrible decision, we can't change that. That's out of our control. The taxation, the different legalities that come into that affect our business. But the one thing you can guarantee is no matter how old you are, how smart you are, how much experience you have, how much money you have, tomorrow is going to bring a new problem. And I think it's the hardest day as an entrepreneur is the day you realize that I could do this for another 40 years. You're a young guy, so you could do this for another 30 or 40 years. And when you realize, and I sound like a doomsday sayer, right? I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but the day a young guy like yourself realizes that no matter how long I do this, the problems don't stop coming. They evolve, right? And you have to adapt, like we said earlier, but the problems change, but they never stop coming. That's a tough day to be an entrepreneur when you make that realization. I mean, and you don't usually make that realization on a good day, right? Let's be honest. It's one of those days where you're just like, why am I doing this? You're ready to throw in the towel, and then it hits you that this is never going to stop. Now, the opposite of that, the best day as an entrepreneur, it's not the day you open. It's not the day you do your ribbon cutting with the chamber or with the city. It's the day it comes after the worst day. Somewhere down the line, you start looking around going, these problems never stop, but I'm here. I'm still here, right? I have conquered all those problems. And you look in the rearview mirror and you're like, look at all that crap that I've dealt with over the years, and I'm still here. The day that you realize the problems never stop, tough day. The day you realize they don't have to stop because you're better than that and you can overcome them, and every problem you overcome makes the next one that's similar to that a little easier, and you gain that experience and that confidence, that's the best day as an entrepreneur, in my opinion.
For sure,
that's when you realize you may not be 10 feet tall and bulletproof, but you are better than the problems that are coming at you.
For sure, and that all comes back to knowledge again, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Right? If you can learn from the best, if you can learn from Gary Vee, if you can learn from Alex Hormozy or Jordan Peterson, they talk about the experiences they've been through and how a lot of their setbacks have really pushed them back to step back and think in a different way. But the person that they've evolved into has taken a huge step from where they were, and that's, like you said, the biggest thing. As soon as you realize what you've overcome and what you've done, building yourself as a strong person, building your team as an unstoppable team, firing the people that aren't a good fit, and really making a team for yourself.
Even the people that bring down the morale of your other employees.
Yeah.
No employee is so good at their job that you can tolerate them bringing down the morale of your other employees.
Yeah.
Nobody is that good.
One thing I live by is I believe in like energy and stuff, right? So I like to try to keep a high vibrational energy. I'd like to speak to entrepreneurs, people like-minded like me. And if I'm speaking to someone that always looks at the negative, always just looks at the worst side of things, I don't want to be around that person because I got to keep my energy high and I want to keep everything positive, keep pushing forward, knowing I can accomplish things. But if you, like you said, if you have someone on your team that is not in that energy, not that mindset, it's someone that's not going to help shift your team into the direction you want to push your team.
Yep, they're devastating to the business and to the morale.
For sure.
And when you start tearing down the morale of your other employees, and they see him getting a paycheck just like they do, they see him getting the perks same as they do. Nobody's that good. Nobody is that good. Nobody is worth that. Yeah, they're just not.
Sure.
No.
And that's where it all starts off, as the mindset, right? If you can get your employees, or even just being an entrepreneur, you have to have an incredible mindset to get through those challenges, like you said earlier, right? You need to be able to push through. You need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to make changes really quick. You need to be able to build a team with that similar mindset to make sure everyone is running on all cylinders, really moving and chugging the train along to hit that goal that you have, but you need to make sure that they are clear on the goal that you want to hit as well. So you guys can do it together, taking little steps as a team.
And know your employees. We started talking about that earlier with, I mentioned like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, that they can't know everybody in these big companies. You and I, we're small. We can know our employees. And just because you give one employee, a bonus, a check, right? A cash bonus, a dollar amount, that doesn't mean that you have to give someone else on the team the check also. I mean, if the money isn't the big motivator, you've got that guy in the team that's got, a newborn at home and a wife that's, stressed out. Okay, so you give Bob a bonus check, but Lee, his wife is at home, and the newborn, he would probably take the rest of the week off. Take a couple of days, take a Friday and Monday, make a long weekend, go help your wife with the newborn, go spend some bond with this child, whatever the case is. That there's nothing wrong with that. No one says you've got to give them the same thing exactly. It's not you just cut checks and hand away their checks, or have a pizza party. It's like, no, give these people what motivates them, because next time you come in, we just said the problems never stop coming. So when next week's problem comes and you throw it at the team going, hey, this is not good. This happened. This is coming. This is new legislation, whatever the case is, and we need to solve this. We need to get ahead of it right now. The guy that's motivated by money, who got a check last time, he knows what's going to happen if he does a good job. He's going to get another check. The guy that had the long weekend to spend with his family, that's motivated by family time and being able to be there for his family and his newborn, he knows what's coming. He knows that when this, storm ends and the calm comes in, he's going to get some time off, and that's going to motivate him. That's that. And you have to have open dialogue with your employees, because if the guy that took the time off now realizes maybe the time off wasn't the best thing, he's a little short on cash, he's got to feel comfortable enough with you to come tell you, could I get the check this time? Or whatever the case is, But that's the, that you have to, if you have that kind of relationship, if you know what your employees want, you probably have a good enough relationship with them that the communication lines are open, and you will know these things when they change. And I think that that work environment, that's hard to replace. And you said earlier, when I said talk about the problems, and you're like, well, that's knowledge and that's experience. It is, but that's just the first layer. What does the knowledge and experience give you? It gives you that problem-solving ability. And that, if you panic, if you have anxiety issues, I'm not saying that you can't own a business if you have anxiety issues, but if your anxiety issues are going to hinder you from problem-solving, you need to think about this. One of the goals that I have, everyone that comes on my podcast, we talk about it on virtually every podcast. The goal of the podcast for my guests is to help promote their business, market them, build their brand a little bit, and get people to know the person. Yeah. What I want for my viewers is anybody that's out there, like you said, you've been doing this for 4 months. So 6 months ago, when you were thinking about doing it, right? I would have loved to had you as a guest or a visitor listening, a subscriber, because I want to share the good and the bad of all my guests, my entrepreneurs, and my experiences with you, the subscriber, who wants to do it for himself but hasn't. You kind of on the fence. And and pardon my language here, but I've said this on almost every podcast. I couldn't give two shits if you do your business or you don't. That's up to you, right? That's none of my business. What I want to know is that watching my podcast, listening to my stories, listening to my guest stories, that it helped you make a good decision. If that decision is, this is not for me, that's still a good decision. If being an entrepreneur really isn't for you, then not going into business we just saved you a ton of time, a ton of money, and a ton of headaches, right?
Yeah.
But on the same token, if you listen to all these stories and you're like, this is what my life is missing, right? I'm in, and it helps you make that decision to go forward. If you tell me that you watch my podcast and we talked you out of going into business, that's not going to disappoint me. It's not going to frustrate me. I'm going to be glad that we were able to help you make your final decision.
For sure. No, that's
so. Yeah, because I've had guests who are like, well, we don't want to talk people out of it. It's like, I don't want to talk people out of it, but I also don't want to talk people into it. I want to share experiences and help them, give them the information that maybe factors in to their decision a bit and help them jump off the fence. Whichever way you go doesn't matter to me. I don't. For sure. So, and I don't want to make that sound negative, like I don't care about you. It's not that. It's just I want to make sure that you, if I can give you more information, if you're doing this, you're a smart guy. So you're going to make a good decision if you have good information.
Yeah.
And I want to try to help provide that.
I love that business model, not even business model, but I love that model behind your podcast and helping people navigate the decisions, because it is entrepreneurship, and I'm just starting, right? I haven't, I've only been in it for a while, and I've loved every moment of it, but it's a lot of hard work. I'm currently have no income stream, and I'm trying my hardest to speak to companies and see if I can get anything rolling, right? It's a lot of hard work. And it's going to be a lot more hard work.
Right. And there's not a lot of return in the beginning. It's not, I mean, from what you just said, if I just talk to you about revenue right now, right, which is it's going to tear it up because that's the, I mean, but I wouldn't do that. We wouldn't talk about revenue. We talk about projected revenue, and we talk about how you get there. And I would tell you, one of the questions I'd ask you first off, if I were your business coach, in that sense is, what are your goals? And most people will give me dollar amounts, right? Mm-hmm. Their goals are dollar amounts. And, and so for me, a big struggle there is, it's like, okay, well, you have to have projections, you have to have targets, because obviously you can't buy groceries on zero. Revenue, right? So zero is not a good target. We gotta have a better number than that. But my thing is, I'm going to relate this to like selling used cars or selling cars. Period. If you talk to a car salesman and you ask him, how many people do you need to talk to every month? A good car salesman, above average car salesman, he'll give you a number. He doesn't have to think about it. He knows. And it's like, okay, so how many is that per week, per day? They'll break it right down. If they know that on average, they have to talk to X amount of people. Let's say they have to talk to 30 people to get 5 of them to actually listen to them and carry on a conversation. And 2 of them are going to test drive a car. 1 will buy one. Yeah. Well, okay, so now the question is to get to your dollar amount. Well, if I can sell 1 car, on average, what do you make per car? I make this much. Okay, well, you can't sell 1 car a month and buy very many groceries. How many cars a month? How much money do you need to make? That's your target. So okay, well, now we know how much a car, when you sell a car, we know what that makes. Put that to your target. Oh, if I sell 12 cars this month, I can eat. Great. Well, 12 times 50, that's your number, right? So every month you've got to talk to, again, you take 12 times, that's 600 people. Well, I've got to talk to 600 people. How many days a week how many days a month are you going to work? Well, probably 22 is what you're going to work in a month. Okay, 600 divided by 22. Do the math. You literally need to talk to 30 people a day on average to sell 12 cars. Now, some months, if you talk to 30 people a day, you'll sell 20 cars. Some months you'll sell 8, but that'll average out. So when I talk about goals, it's like when I ask you, what's your goal today? If you're a used car salesman, your goal should be, I need to talk to 30 people today. That's my goal. It's not about, I need to sell this many cars. No, you need your goal should be task oriented, not target oriented.
It's all about target. It's all about breaking it down, right? You have to basically, the way I look at it, when I first got started in this, I looked at it as the whole picture. I looked, where do I want to be in 5 years? Like, okay, I want to be making money to be comfortable and make a living off of my company. Okay, what do I need to do to make it? What do I need to do every year to get to there? Break it down one step further. What do I need to do by the end of this year? And then keep breaking that down into little steps little goals that I need to accomplish. Just like by the end of this month, my goal is to sign for my first client, get something under my belt and get rolling. That's what I'm all focused on is signing my first client. And by doing that, I'm doing my podcast, right? So I need to book podcasts, and you keep breaking that goal down. As long as you keep breaking that goal down, you have something to take your next step. You're going to hit that goal in 5 years as long as you keep your mind on it and keep pushing towards that destination. But you need to break it down, and that's the most important thing. And a lot of people miss is they have this vision in mind. They want to be here in 5 years. They want the $1 million,
but they don't know how to get there.
But they don't take the time to really plan out how they're going to get there.
Right.
They just fall into it and they just go for it. But
it's like shooting a shotgun into the clouds. It's like you need to build that foundation, and you need to come up. And like you said, you're putting in the work right now. And today you don't have any revenue, so you don't have any. You don't have the goal. You don't have anything to show for it. That's nothing to be embarrassed by or to be downtrodden. That's just you just know that whatever you've done, you got to do a little more of it. Right? We just keep moving forward, and you set the goals. Like I say, you have a target, and then you set goals to get to the target. You know that you got to try and create that roadmap.
For sure, and that's every aspect in life. That's not even just business, right?
It is. No,
every aspect. Even if like every aspect in life. Say you're working, even if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're working your business job, your 9-to-5 job, and you have a goal that you want to save up enough money to one day, say you want to buy a Porsche. You need to break that down. How much money do you need to save? What do you need to do to maybe get that promotion to step up your income a little bit more? What do you need? Maybe you can do something on the side to help that as well. It's all about breaking it down and brainstorming different ideas to get there as well. And it's a huge life lesson that a lot of people don't understand and don't take the time to spend with themselves and learn from themselves on how they can navigate themselves to get there.
Well, even just like when you're in college, your goal in college is to get a degree.
Yeah.
And that again, what's the target? The target is the goal is the degree. That's what you want. Okay, well, your college is going to tell you to get this degree, you need this many credits.
Yeah.
Well, how long do you want to go to college? You want to go to college for 12 years? Well, not unless you're going to be a surgeon. Let's cut this back down to 3 or 4 years. And if I do 3 or 4 years, how many credits do I need? Well, how many credits do I have to have every quarter? Every year. It's a pretty simple breakdown. It's just numbers. And but then the goal, again, all these numbers, they're just targets. The goal is, the task-oriented goal. Where's my first step? Buy an alarm clock, right? Don't be late. Make that decision. Am I going to get up every morning and go to class, or am I going to be a slug and I'm going to go to class on Mondays, Wednesdays, and maybe Friday morning, and then I'll take the long weekend and we'll call it good. Well, again, that's a risky way to try and get a degree, to try and get your grades. So that's the same thing. You can apply this to any aspect of life. You're absolutely right.
For sure. And I try to live off that model. I try to break down everything from a business aspect to even a fitness aspect. Too,
just like me. That's how I see it. I always joke about that. But it's like I've been a nerd since I was a kid, but that makes the world work. You've got to have a plan, and some people make it work just flying by the seat of their pants, but not many.
Yeah.
Most of the folks that try that they don't make it work very well.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for people the biggest thing for people who want to get somewhere but they never take that first step is because they don't take the time to be with themselves and take themselves down to actually plan something out. A lot of people don't like being alone. A lot of people like putting a Band-Aid over it by going to hang out with friends or drinking on the weekends, right? I think that first step is people really need to realize that the alcohol is just a Band-Aid for their bigger issues, and that they need to take a step back and plan something out for themselves so they can really focus on what they want in life. And even not in life, even maybe it's just like a fitness aspect. Maybe they want to, like you wanted to lose weight, and I bet you had your goal and you had to take the steps to achieve that goal. And you would have had to sit down with yourself and create that plan. I think a lot of people Band-Aid themselves from doing that because they try to they try to keep themselves from reality and actually going through the process. But in reality, it's super amazing going through this process and actually sitting down with yourself and doing it.
Well, and I think to your point too, the people that never get started, that never get out of their 9-to-5 job and into being an entrepreneur, it's fear. And again, I keep saying this, but back to your earlier point, you said, knowledge and experience. Most of what we're afraid of is the unknown. And if we don't take the time to put our knowledge and experience and try to research what we're going into, the more unknown that you're heading into, the more scary it is. Yeah. And some people just don't deal with that fear very well. And it's like, I just can't do it. It's like, do you know what you're trying to do? I mean, well, I want to start a business. That's pretty broad. That's pretty broad. What do you, again, let's break this down. What do you have to do? In the U.S. here, we want to file for like an LLC or a S corporation, a C corporation. We want to do a partnership, whatever type of business entity you're going to create. Well, let's figure out let's find a name. We talked about names earlier, right? That's important. Get a good name that explains what you do. Is the website available? Because that URL is important. Now, it's becoming less important because we have all these it's not .com anymore. There's a million dot something. And so, but, is it available? And then can you build a website? Do you have to hire it done? Can you afford to hire it done? Can you afford what you want? Do you know how to do what you want? There's a million questions, and it's very overwhelming. You grab a journal, right? This is my podcast journal. It's got my little men with microphones on it. It's got the small business talk and my networking group. But I keep notes in here when you're in there, because it's like you can't forget Corson, and most of what you and I did was over email. But I still make the notes because for me it's a memory hack. If I write something down in that journal, I will remember it. Yeah. I may never go back and reference it. But if you and I talk about something, or I read an email and you tell me this, it's like, okay, yeah, I got it. Maybe I got it. 2 days later, It's like, oh, what did Corson say? What was his last name? What, you just all the things just start to escape you. If I write it down, I remember it way better. And I don't know if everyone's like that, but it works for me. And like I said, once I wrote Corson Schmidt and I put down 6 o'clock or 6:30 tonight, and actually last week we were planning on doing this and I had to bail on you. But when I put that down, it's like, now I got it. Now I'm going to remember 90% of that instead of 20% of it.
Yeah. No,
but you got to figure out what works for you.
Yeah, I'm 99% sure I'm the same way, because for me, I think it's a visualized thing. We can do a lot of typing, we can do a lot of emails. You're doing that all day. As soon as you take the time to actually grab a pen, write it down, visualize, see yourself write it down. Right. You remember it, and I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I know it works. It works great for me. And again, I don't know how many people are wired that way, but it doesn't matter. It works for me. Yeah. I'm the only one I got to worry about right now. So, but that's the things you take the shortcuts if they help you with your success. For sure. A shortcut to be a shortcut, it'll hurt you almost every time. But if you have something like that, okay, I'm gonna have my little journal and we'll make the notes and I'll remember it better. Well, that keeps me from being embarrassed or leaving you stranded, because I didn't show up or whatever the case is, Yeah. But again, and that leads to problem solving. That everything that I don't forget is one less problem I have to deal with.
Yeah.
So sure. And it's all, like I say, there's so many. We set goals every day without even thinking about it. You know, I mean, just as simple as me being here on time tonight. I didn't log on at 6:35. I logged on at 6:25, so I could be here for you at 6:30. And you were already there. Like popped up as just you were already there. It's like, this is awesome. We got two guys that nobody wants to be late.
Yeah.
So,
you don't want to be the late guy. That's the worst. That's the worst.
Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah, I felt bad that I was the second out of two of us to show up, but I'm like, I'm still early.
It was perfect. And a lot of the people that come on the podcast don't show up late. They make sure they're on time because they don't want to make a bad presentation, and it's super great. But no, we got a little bit off track with this podcast, but business is such an amazing thing, and there's so much knowledge out there on business, and it's so cool to hear the different stories and hear the challenges people have been through and hear how they've overcome these challenges. And then obviously from someone that easily could have been a business coach but decided to run their own business, it's nice to hear your insights as well. And it's been a great conversation.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I really appreciate having me on. And yeah, when I was young, I skipped the business coach side of things because I really didn't feel like I had the experience to go in, because most anybody I was going to coach in business, they were all going to be older than me. And that was intimidating, very intimidating, And I thought, then I got a little greedy. It's like, I can make more money at this stage of my life running the business than trying to coach someone else's, or mold someone else's. And I saw it as an uphill battle. But then after you've kind of made it, when you've got life in hand, the way you saw it going, or maybe the way you didn't see it going, but it's good, then it's like, okay, now I have the ability to give back a little bit and maybe help out a little more. And you're in a better position because now I don't have to beg, borrow, or steal the money to do it. I don't need you to pay me. Let's just chat about this a little bit. And if I'm not charging you for it, if we don't see eye to eye, it's a lot easier to walk away too. I mean, let's be fair. That's
for sure.
That's a thing. If my help isn't wanted or my advice isn't taken ever, then there's no real point in me spinning my wheels. I'll just move on. You do your thing, I'll do mine, and everybody's happy. And I'm not writing you a check because you paid me and you don't feel like you got your money's worth or whatever. It's where when I was younger, if I did that, I would have had to got paid. I mean, I need to eat. You got to buy groceries. So, yeah. But again, I really appreciate the opportunity of reaching out and giving me some time here. This has been a lot of fun tonight.
Hey, no worries. It was a great conversation. You've so much knowledge, and I'm glad that we got to speak it. It wasn't so automotive based like it usually is, but I actually would like to eventually get into more of this entrepreneur talk and really helping people guide themselves like you want to do through a decision, and not even through a decision, but if they're in a tough entrepreneurial state, maybe they're going through some challenges, they can hop on the podcast and really gain some insights from leaders in any business, because every business owner goes through challenges. Different. Some are different, some go through the same challenges, and there's only one way to overcome them, and that's knowledge. And if people can throw this on in the car when they're driving, it's the best thing. That's the one thing I want to do is help people obviously grow a business, grow themselves, and turn themselves into the best version of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think being an entrepreneur, there's plenty of challenges, and the best way to solve a problem is to avoid the problem. And I don't mean brush under the rug. I mean, navigate past it with, using my experience. I mean, you're younger than I am. So so that doesn't mean I'm better at this than you, but it does mean I've seen way more problems than you have today. That'll change as you get older. As you gain experience and you're doing this longer and longer, you're going to have more and more things that go wrong. And that's not that's not a bad thing. It's just that's reality. I've already seen a lot of things, and I'll see a lot more go wrong, in the future for sure. But if I can explain and tell the story of my pitfalls, that might help you avoid a few of them without having to solve them. Just avoid them and get around them. And that's what I want to share with people, and I want to help you share with people is, listen to what we have. I have 5 kids, and you try to teach your kids the same thing that we're talking about in business. The here, I did this, don't do that. Your kids don't listen to you when it comes to that for the most part, so they do have to learn it the hard way. But it doesn't make you as a parent, it doesn't make you quit trying. And so same thing here as an entrepreneur. I'd really like to help people make the decision in the beginning. That's really my focal point for me, is making that decision. Once you've made the decision, if you go into it, then I'd be happy to help out, lend an ear or an eye or a hand, whatever we have, whatever you need. I'd like to help a little bit too. If I have the experience in your field or with what you're doing.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast today. It was a super good conversation, and I hope we can do it again for sure. Maybe I'll come down to Rochester area and do one in-house. Yeah,
I'd love to have you on Small Business Talk with Jerry too. We'll just take off where we left off.
Yeah, no, for sure. That'd be awesome. I appreciate you coming,
Awesome,
Jerry.
Chris. You bet. Have a great night.
You as well. Thank you. Awesome.